Welcome to the first ProCon Marketing Peer Community Session. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Morgan Weiss. I'm the Digital Media Marketing Manager at JCC Association of North America. And now I'm pleased to welcome our first speaker today, Jason Dorolecki, Chief Marketing Officer at the Evelyn Rubenstein JCC in Houston. Hi, Jason.
Hi, Morgan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Amazing to see so many people on this call, and it's great to see all of your smiling faces. It always makes for a better time talking. We can actually see the people you're talking to instead of a set of blank screens. So glad to see you all. I'm going to jump right in and share a little bit about what I'm going to be talking about today. So when Morgan and I talked about speaking with you all a few weeks ago, the topic came up that, there's a lot of J's out there that are kind of looking at this Salesforce integrated software type solution. But the common struggle is that nobody really knows where to start. It's a big thing when we're talking about CRMs and even beyond CRMs, accounting software, marketing software, operations software, ticketing software, and how do all of those things kind of fit into the puzzle. So we thought it made a lot of sense to talk about where we've been in the JCC here in Houston, how we kind of got started on this initiative of digital transformation, and where we are now, and maybe share a little bit of insight of what our implementation looked like, what we've learned since then, and then, of course, a little with them, what's in it for marketing. So we'll talk about some of the benefits that we've seen in the end, and kind of what we're continuing to work on now. So to start us off, we're going to talk a little bit about digital transformation and kind of just what was the beginning of this process, and what are the steps that we took to kind of get things kickstarted. So we're going to talk about solution vision. We're going to talk about advocates, use cases, staff, and volunteers. We're going to dig into each one of these a little bit more and share kind of what those mean. So one of the very first steps that we took when we started going down this path was to figure out what our current reality was. What you see on the left was our reality about 4 years ago. Those were all the software pieces that we kind of had in this building, and pretty much all of them were disconnected. Disparate systems, none of them really connected to one another, manual processes to get them from data from one place to another, if it was possible at all. So the first thing we did is kind of say, okay, what does a potential solution look like? And so what we designed was what you see on the right there, which was an integrated stack. When we started this process, we had these pieces that you see on the bottom down here in blue. Those were kind of the Salesforce out of the box things that we knew we kind of got when we started. And then we started building up from there. So what you see in the poppy color is kind of the marketing and sales stack. So Emma, our email marketing, Mowgli, SMS marketing, Traction Guest, Form Stack, a survey platform. Above that in green and purple are different operations pieces. So Traction Rec, Quick Scores for sports leagues, DocuSign, DSX for facility entry, Revita, Patron Manager, UPace, and then finally on top, none of this worked if it didn't integrate with our accounting software. So MIP, you see up here at the top. When we started this process, a lot of these boxes were blank because we didn't really know what the solutions were. So as we've kind of gone through the visioning process, we started filling in these gaps, filling in these boxes so we could get a true picture of what the final state would look like. And they've changed along the way. What we thought might be a good solution day one, a year later, as we kind of went through this process, some of these changed and we pivoted and adapted. The second step, after we created this kind of vision of where we wanted to go, was start to identify some advocates. So, some of you might have heard the term skunk works, and I'll use that here. Although we weren't really operating in secret, it was kind of an informal group that we kind of identified folks who were ripe for a change, people who were influential in the organization that we knew we could kind of tap into to help us do a digital transformation, more than just a software change, but really changing the organization and how we used our software and how it grew with us. And we used this group to really identify what the problems and challenges are that we had with our current software sets. Once we had these people identified and started working through that process, they kind of started to build use case scenarios. So we started to say, what are the different ways that we could use this software? Not just replacing the things that we have now and putting them onto a Salesforce stack, but how do we start to use those tools that are available to make the JCC operate better, more efficiently, more effectively, and how to serve our members and build a better community. We also identified this vision of what our final product was going to look like. So move to an integrated environment where we have all member, program, and activities and tracking mechanisms all in a single software environment where various departments and functions within the J have access to a centralized database, a single source of truth, with a complete outlook of a member in a single place. This space will be customizable, expandable, and what I believe is most important, scalable. So after we had this small staff kind of bought in, we've developed some use cases, we're starting to understand the direction that we're moving, then it became time to engage with the rest of our staff and really kind of get some input on if this is the right direction, what is it that we're not thinking of, and we kind of took this vision to the rest of the staff. At this point, we had Salesforce folks coming to us to the demos of what the Salesforce environment looked like. We had Traction Rec folks come on site to demo what Traction Rec looked like. And we went through this process of a feedback loop. So we asked staff first before they came out, what is it that you want in a solution? What are the struggles that you're having now? What are the things that the software doesn't do that you want it to be able to do? Then we went through and actually demoed what the solution would look like. And then we went back and said, okay, now that you've shared what those struggles were, you've seen what the software can do you think the solution is going to work for what you need? Is it going to address those gaps? Once we heard that feedback, we then echoed their feedback, and we ended up with a document that looked like this. And it's a lot of words on a page, but this was feedback survey that we got from staff. So after we walked through this demo, we wanted to hear what they liked, what they didn't like, what concerns that they had, so that as we started to build this potential solution, we were able to both echo the positive things, the things that they liked about it, and we were able to highlight those, as well as look at the concerns and say, okay, what in that demo did not meet their expectations, or what did they feel like were potential gaps, so that as we did a second round of demos, we were able to build additional solutions to meet those concerns. And then the next step was going to stakeholders. I have to give a lot of praise to our CEO, Joel, on this step. I'm the type of person that I grab a project and I want to run forward and go as fast as I can and get it going and see results. And he really pushed back and kind of said, all right, we need to, staff aren't the only people that need to be on board here. We need to make sure that our board members feel engaged in this process. We need to make sure that our members and people who use our current software are engaged in this process. We need to slow down and get all their feedback as well. And that process really helped. Made sure that we were on the right path. One of the points where I kind of realized that this really made a lot of sense is we had a phone call with about, 8 or 9 of our board members. And we sat on this call and we thought, okay, how are we going to talk them into this is the direction that we need to go? And we get on this call, and about 5 minutes into it, we realized that they all knew what Salesforce was already. In their offices, every single one of them either already used it or they were going through an implementation in their office to use it. So they all recognized that this is really kind of the gold standard of CRMs. They understood how the system worked, how it was expandable, and how it would really benefit the organization. So we got them on board, and again, started building these advocates, around the platform and around this direction. This also gave us time to connect to community user groups. We in cities all across this country and all across the world, really, Salesforce has an amazing group of community of users behind it. And there are nonprofit groups, there are admin groups, there are marketing groups. So as we kind of went through this buy-in process, we also started getting connected to these user groups. And what this does is, one, provides you access to other people who are in the same boat as you. They're starting out using Salesforce. They're connecting out with other people who have the same types of questions, the same type of struggles. But what you'll also find are people who are advocates for Salesforce that are outside of your JCC world, and they're looking for nonprofits to help. So we connected with folks that were experts and professionals in the Salesforce world, but were willing to help us out as we went through our implementation process to help us build our skill sets on how to use the platform, and even come in and do some pro bono work for us as we went through our migration. So the next phase, after we actually went through all that buy-in process, was to actually implement and go live. So absolutely critical in this stage is staff understanding that agency leadership is committed to this process, and that this isn't just about a software upgrade. This is about a digital transformation for the agency and using data to grow our organization. Having an executive sponsor who stays plugged into the project, whether that means someone who's just checking in and serving as a sponsor to the project, or if it's someone who wants to be more hands-on and actual team member in the project, but having that executive level sponsor involved in the project, showing that they're committed to it. And again, staff just understanding that this isn't just about software. This is about digital transformation and community building through technology. The second important part as you're going through implementation and going live is setting expectations for staff, helping them to understand what's different about this. Everybody has gone through software implementations. Everybody's gone through this before. But what makes this implementation different? Every software I've been a part of, whether it's in the JCC or the YMCA world, the software works a certain way. It's a suite of products. Everything fits inside of that box. Salesforce is a little different. It's a platform. And the analogy I always provide is that it's like your iPhone. You buy your iPhone from the Apple Store, you bring it home, you open the box, and it does some really cool things out of the box. It has a few basic apps on it. You can make a phone call. You can store your contacts. But it really starts to be magical when you start to add your own apps. You add your own apps, you add your contacts, you add your photos, you have your wall screen, your branding of your phone looks different, and you build this phone that is completely unique to you. It doesn't look like anybody else's. It doesn't operate like anybody else's. It works the way that you want it to work.
Birds, weeds.
And that's Salesforce.
Yeah.
That's where it really shines. It does some really great things out of the box. That as you start to add things to it, you start to add software, add integrations, is where it really starts to shine. And with that said, the difference here is that when you go live with Salesforce, that's really kind of just the beginning. With most software, it kind of works the way it works, and you kind of have to adapt your business needs to fit inside of that box. And you don't really have a lot of control over the development lifecycle and what features and what things are going to add to the software. But with this solution, with Salesforce, you really control your own destiny. You are able to make it what you want. You're able to develop to manage your own development roadmap and build out feature sets as you need for your organization specifically. And where possible, this is a tough one. You always want to phase it in and beta test where you can. In the Salesforce world, you'll always hear this phrasing of crawl, walk, run. Find ways that you can implement Salesforce on a smaller scale. Part of Salesforce.org is that every nonprofit organization can get 10 users for free. You can go out today and you can go to Salesforce.org, put in your application, and you can get your first 10 users for free. That will get you the nonprofit success pack, 10 users, everything Salesforce does out of the box, absolutely at no cost. And you can start, getting comfortable in the environment. What we did was we started with our ticketing and fundraising. So our arts and culture department and our fundraising department were both kind of itching for something new. They weren't happy with their existing solutions. So what we did was we went with our solutions for those two departments first, before we really jumped in head first with Traction Rec about a year later after that. And again, this isn't a out of the box software solution. So you really have to come at it with a little bit of a different mindset. You need to grow your in-house skills or hire those on if needed. So people who are admins who understand Salesforce on the back end, or bring those folks on if you don't have them internally. When we launched, we didn't have anybody in-house who really understood Salesforce or what a Salesforce admin was or what a Salesforce business analyst was. But what we did have were talented staff who were ambitious, that wanted to learn and wanted to grow. So we had staff that got admin certificates or working towards admin certificates, who were able to take on the daily daily management of the system. And you really need folks who have a kind of a growth mindset. So have when you're implementing solutions, asking yourselves the questions, have we thought about it in a different way? Or why do we do things this way? Was this a process that we set up years ago because we had to, meet the way that a certain software worked? And does that still make sense, or is there a better way to do it? And asking the question of, well, I guess this isn't really a question, but having the mentality of let's give it a try. We can always course correct later. Having a software where you can pivot and adapt, it removes some of that risk of doing something the wrong way, because you can always adapt and change. And a little bit about the development life cycle. And I use the term development, not as we all know development, like fundraising, but development in terms of the software. Collecting user feedback, which you do during the implementation phase that we talked about earlier, but analyzing business practices, searching for Excel documents that exist in different parts of your organization. Those Excel documents are very valuable because people are using those to track things. Whether it's development or program area or arts and culture, those Excel documents are the things that show you what's important to particular departments. So analyzing those documents, figuring out how you get that data into the system, into Salesforce, so that it's all in one place and everybody can use that data. Design solutions that add value to departments, and then repeat that process. So identifying issues, design solutions, deploy the solutions, collect feedback on those solutions, and then drive adoption of those solutions, and then repeat that process. So what is it? What are the benefits that we've kind of seen coming out of our Salesforce implementation? We've been live on it for, 2.5 years. We've been live on Traction Rep for 1.5 years. one of I think the biggest kind of aha moments after we went live and we kind of realized how powerful this solution was, is that we no longer have to say, well, it just doesn't work like that. The software doesn't work like that, or we can't do that. That's not a functionality that it has. Last summer, last February, just like all of you, we went through camp registration, and we had all of these families registered for camp. And of course, COVID hit, we all shut down camp. We gave back refunds. And then we started to figure out, okay, what does this summer look like for us? Well, here in Houston, while we didn't have camp, we did launch a program called Summer at the J, and it was a stripped down camp experience. And as we started to work through this new program, our CEO came and said, I would really like all of those families that registered for summer camp to have priority access. I want them to be able to register first. If they were the first ones to register for camp, they should be the first ones that get to register for summer fun at the J, because we knew it was going to be a very limited program. My initial reaction was, oh, we don't have any ability to do that. Just the system doesn't work like that. After I went home and slept on it for a night, I started to get some ideas generating in my head, and I thought, well, it doesn't work like that, but could we make it work like that? And I started to have a couple of ideas, and came in the next day and I said, well, hold on. I know I said it didn't work like that, but let me make a couple of phone calls. I've got an idea that I think might work. Within about 2 days, we had a working solution, as simple as creating a field on a contact record that was a enrollment group. You've all, probably most of you have probably flown with Southwest Airlines, and you've experienced the, A boarding group, B boarding group, C boarding group. Well, we kind of did that with Summer Fun at the J registration. We had a field created on the contact record where we were able to assign a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, as high as you want to go. And we then took all those people who registered for summer camp and we split them up into groups. And we had the first 100 who were group 1, and the next 100 were group 2, and the next 100 were group 3. And then we sent them emails and said, hey, you're in group 1, you can register on May 1st, starting at 10 o'clock. And group 2, you can start on May 1st at 12 o'clock. And we sent them text messages. When it was 5 minutes before their time to start registering, they got a text message from us straight through Salesforce that said, hey, don't forget, your registration time is coming up. So within a couple of days, we built this customized solution straight through Salesforce to meet a business need that just a couple of years ago would not have been possible. Nimbleness and adaptability. So not long after we had that experience with our Summer Fun at the J program, we started turning our attention towards virtual programming. When we realized that this wasn't just a 1 month or 2 month thing, that we were kind of in this virtual programming for the long haul, we realized that we needed to be able to monetize that virtual programming. No longer we couldn't spend the next year just delivering free Zoom classes and free Zoom events. So we reached out to Traction Rec, found out that they had a product that they were working on called Traction Gather, and that combined with Salesforce Experience Cloud, we're able to build a solution in just a matter of weeks to deliver programs to members to where they could sign on to our J at Home platform and see content that was tailored perfectly to them, depending on who they were. So if they were a public member of the public, of the community who was signing in, they didn't have a membership, they didn't register for anything, they would see events on their page that they could watch that were just for them, that were available to everybody. But if someone was a facility member, they were a fitness member with us, when they signed on, they got a whole different experience of classes. They were able to see group exercise classes and TRX classes and yoga and Pilates, things that they would typically come into our fitness center to do. And then beyond that, if someone registered for a program in Traction Rec, or if they bought a ticket to a film festival event through Patron Manager, we're able to gate content based on all of those actions. So whether you are the public, whether you are a member, whether you are a tennis member, whether you registered for a program or bought a ticket to an event, we're able to gate that content and show just the content that is available to each person, customized to them. But what's in it for marketing? So those are all great things, right? Those are great things, but as marketing folks, why does it matter to us? So there is data mining for days. So gone are the days of having to go to 5 different systems and figure out, how do I pull information from each of these and kind of combine them together using some type of Excel magic. Now you've got the ability in one place to go, and let's say you want to find all the people who are active members who have bought a ticket to a theater event in the past year and have donated at least $1,000 to your annual campaign in the last year. No problem. You can pull that all together with a single report, and reusable. You can adjust the filters, and get some really great data. And we talked about this just a second ago. Show different content to members versus public, virtual programming, gating programs based on registrations or ticket purchases. And it doesn't stop at program registrations and virtual content. Email marketing. Again, in a single place, I can see everybody who is on our various email distribution lists. I can track what emails they received, if they've opened it, if they've clicked on it, all again directly in Salesforce without even having to go to a separate platform. I can track email or track physical pieces. So direct mail campaigns, development solicitations for fundraising. Can see all of that all in one place. SMS functionality, whether it's one-on-one SMS communications with members, or SMS marketing, where you're sending out marketing messages to segments of members. Case tracking, both internal and external. So, gone are the days of losing member inquiries or issues in that email black hole. We now have a system set up to where we can track who owns a case, what the issues are, who's responsible for moving that case forward and closing that case. And imagine, this is probably my favorite one, the soft phone via voice over IP. Imagine you have a member who's calling the front desk, and that member, the phone, when the phone rings, your Salesforce instance actually looks at that caller ID, searches your database, pulls up that member, all before you answer the phone. So as you're answering your phone, you actually see who you're talking to, what the call history is, what emails they've been sent. You can see the whole history of that member.
Thank you, Jason.
That is it for me. And if there are any questions, if anything came through chat, happy to answer.
So we have about just a few minutes to answer questions. If you guys want to put them in the chat, Jason can probably field 1 or 2 maybe, but we can do a follow-up. If you want to send me your questions, I'll send them all to Jason. He can put answers in a letter that we send out to the listserv, or we can do a follow-up cohort call if there's enough interest. So don't worry, there's plenty of time to follow up with Jason with all sorts of questions. So if you want to go ahead and put 1, I think we did see something. What are you using for camp? Did you use CampMinder? What'd you use in Salesforce? What are you adding on? Let's ask that one.
So we did use CampMinder. I know there's going to be a lot of gasps if there's any camp people on the call, but we killed it. We did all of our camp registration directly through Traction Rec this year. And then just this past week, we've been building out pages on our digital experience, our J at Home platform, to where members can now go on and they can update directly through the online experience their emergency contacts, authorized pickups, their child's allergy information, medical history, their swim skills, all directly through the platform, and that's saving that information directly into Salesforce. So we've kind of eliminated our need for CampMinder. We primarily used it for forums. We don't have an overnight camp, so.
So I would say one last quick question, and even though it's probably a really long response. If you could do it all over again, would you? And what would you do differently? Which I'm sure we could do another cohort call based on what you learned and how you would implement it differently. But
Yeah.
would you do it all over again?
I would say 100%, without a doubt, I would do it again. It's been transformational. It's been amazing. If I were to do things differently, I think going back, I said earlier that I owed a little bit of respect to Joel for telling me to slow down and get more input. You can't take enough time in those early phases to really get buy-in from everybody. Making sure that everybody is involved in the process, from membership to marketing to finance, and making sure that everybody's really bought into the process and understands what the expectations are going forward, and that this is a learning process and a growing process, and it doesn't stop when you go live. It continues after that.
Now we're going to move on to the second part of our marketing session, where we're going to learn more about Google Analytics and Google Ad Grants. With our speakers from Red Whisk Creative, Catherine Kolbeck and Chris Clark. And now I'm going to hand things over to Clark.
Just wanted to welcome everybody to the conference. It's an exciting 3 days that you guys have ahead of you. And we are looking forward to talking today a little bit about Google Analytics and, of course, Google Ad Grants. This is not an easy topic, to be candid with everybody, because our experience is that we will find that there are a lot of people that have already started with analytics and have started with grants, and there are some people that have no idea where to start. And so I think what Clark and I tried to do today was to pull together both the basics as well as some best practices when it comes to analytics and to grants. And I think the most important thing to know is that this is a starting point, and we'll share the deck out with everybody because there's a lot of information, there's a lot of screenshots. But the most important thing is, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. So this is something, Clark and I have partnered with probably 15 plus JCCs over the years, and really helping to understand how analytics and grants help move the needle for everything from membership and fitness to driving fitness revenue, to driving camp revenue, to driving programming for, I'm specifically thinking about arts classes. So it's not just, fitness and wellness, which is really what we're known for, but we've really worked across the agency to figure out how we can use analytics and grants to help drive the fundamentals of your organization. So without further ado, I'll introduce my esteemed partner, Mr. Chris Clark, who goes by Clark, and he is our website guru. And he is going to talk to us today about analytics and grants. So thanks, Clark, for taking it away.
Well, Catherine, you covered everything so well. I think we can just wrap it up. And
that's it. Right? That's all we needed. I think everybody knows everything now.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you guys will learn, I'm a bit of a smart aleck here. So we'll wrap through this. I'll try and keep your attention on everybody's at home. But like Catherine said, very much appreciate you being here. And we're our best to hopefully put the fundamentals in place for you. And also, if you have those already, maybe throw a few tips your ways that might help you with both of these initiatives, if you will. So let's get started and we'll go from there. So on the Google Analytics side, we talked about before, we're going to cover fundamentals. We're going to cover account setup. Sorry about that. That keeps popping up. We'll talk about understanding the dashboard. We're also going to talk a little bit about GA4, Google Analytics 4, and why I'd recommend you not switch to that. Setting up basic goals, which are really important for any of the marketing initiatives you might be doing, and understanding how people are interacting, not only on your website, but from the different traffic sources you're sending them. I always add a slide about what should I track. People ask me all the time, I'm in Google Analytics, I've got all this data, what would you recommend that I track from that standpoint? And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the additional tools that are out there for integration into Google Analytics. You have Google Tag Manager, you got Search Console. Next, I have a Discovery tab now that has, I don't know how many different product offerings out there from Google. Some of you might have heard about Google Data Studio 2, which can get into more advanced data reports, things like that. So we'll touch on those a little bit. And then there is basically a screenshot of those of you familiar with Google Analytics. Right up here at the top, if you guys log in, you're going to see this little bar. And this is really kind of their let's go intro into Google Analytics 4. We'll talk about this a little bit later on, but I would avoid it right now. It's in beta. And Google and beta are a really bad combination. And I'll get further in depth in that as we go from there. Google Grants, again, we're going to talk about fundamentals there. We're going to talk about campaign setups. This is going to be after you've already been accepted and approved into the program. So Google does have certain requirements that it wants to see in the Google ad accounts. It also has some health requirement or health, requirements. So we're going to talk about those, some setup tips along the ways that I found have helped over the years. We're going to talk about valid conversions. You see me do this a lot with Google. Valid conversions. So we're going to talk about that. And then mention the site health, and then some management tips. Just again, over the years, found a few fun ways, creative ways to make sure that you can kind of stay ahead of the game with Google a little bit and keep those fun non-compliance reports coming your way. And there you go. I don't know any of those that are currently managing a Google Ads non-compliance report. You'll get this in the mail or email. And kind of gives you that sense of dread. Basically, if you're out of compliance with certain features within Google, after about 2 months, they'll send you one of these. Not to fear, it's very easy to get it taken care of and cleaned up. We've come in on several clients and helped them reopen suspended accounts. Google is usually pretty good about how it works with that. It just might take them several years to get back to you. And I say years in quotes from that standpoint. So Google Analytics fundamentals. We'll get into the account setup, understanding the dashboard. So when you guys log in, we'll have some screenshots here. I'll give an overview of what you can expect to find there. We'll talk about setting up basic goals. We've got some screenshots here that show you how to set up a destination goal. We'll get into what should I track. There's 5 main components that I recommend that clients look at, that we look at all the time for ourselves. In addition to the Google Analytics tools, and then go from there. But if used correctly, so this is a screenshot of a channel report on the acquisition of Google Analytics. And so you can see we've got the organic search, we've got display marketing. We do a lot of custom intent or remarketing type campaigns for certain clients, direct paid search, social. You'll be able to see any email campaigns that you're doing. The wonderful thing about this is that it'll tie in behavior. So bounce rates, time on site, how many pages are people hitting the site and interacting. So those are very important components. But then also from a conversion standpoint, particularly as we get into Google Ads, it's important to understand how the paid elements are doing. But also at the same time, I know a lot of you are running Facebook campaigns, Instagram, you're doing email. We'll kind of give you the basics to set up and be able to track and understand, how that's working. Have a lot of JCCs worked with over the years. I spent a lot of money on newspaper ads. So is it working? This will help you be able to figure that out from that standpoint. All right, so account setup. So the basics. I actually ran into this weekend. We had a client who had a Google Analytics and Search Console account set up under the agency's name, and they are parting ways with the agency, and the agency won't get them access because it's under their main agency account. So we're literally having to create a new analytics and search console for them, which is crazy. So we've downloaded the reports and now we're doing this. So it's very important to understand who has that admin access to your analytics. I would strongly recommend, even if it's somebody internally, people leave all the time, for various reasons. If you have an employee left and they set it up and 6 months later you can't get a hold of them and you need to change something in analytics, you're going to be in trouble. So I would strongly recommend understanding who has the admin account, and just setting up a generic Gmail with the brand and connecting everything through there. That way, no matter what happens, you own it. You can always access it and go from there. And I can't tell you how many people I see run into this issue. I talked a little bit about Google Analytics 4 before, and that was that bar up at the top of the screen. I talked about, hey, let's learn about it and this and that. It has some neat features. And I adopted it on a couple sites early on for different campaigns I was running. And in both cases, I had to go back and create different standard Google Analytics account. HubSpot would not integrate into. You guys just had this wonderful presentation on Salesforce. I doubt it integrates into that correctly now. And it does do more with event tracking and makes it a little bit easier. But at the same time, I also run into the case where I still have to use Google Tag Manager to tag very specific embeds. Anytime you say anything with Google that is in beta, it means they're testing it. And once it gets made, you can probably be sure that they're going to ask feedback on it for about a year. And it's not worth the headache if you have a lot of heavy integrations. If you're not that integrated into different things, then yeah, go ahead, give it a shot. But my recommendation right now would be to kind of let it be. And then we'll also talk a little about Google audiences. I know everybody hears about Google remarketing. In the settings section, there's a wonderful area where you can basically tell Google Analytics, anytime somebody visits this page, you can set up a duration and start compiling lists of people that have hit those pages. So for other J's in the past, we set up fitness pages, we set them up for camps, art, as Catherine mentioned before, swimming, and you can get very targeted if you start doing remarketing ads and other initiatives as well. So there is a screenshot of the new GA4. It looks nice. The unfortunate thing is once this goes live, pretty much all the dashboard presentation I talked to you about today will be different because for whatever reason, Google decides it needs to change things every 6 months to a year to keep us on our toes, I guess. If you're not detecting the sarcasm from me, then I'll just let you guys know it's coming. And then this is also an example of audiences that we set up. This is one of my B2B clients, and they have set up remarketing lists. So this first one here, distribution project planner. They spend a lot of money with LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is very expensive, okay? $15 per click. And a lot of times the traffic that hit the site quality is not very good. So we set up to make sure that if we're going to spend money like that on a certain source, we want to be able to retarget to them. So maybe the offer land page that we tried the first time doesn't work. This allows us to start building a list of visitors there, okay? We have EPC targeted pages for very specific campaigns I have. There's 4 or 5 pages in this. We have all website users, and then it just goes down the list. We had a download guide that anybody that hit that page, we knew that they were interested in cost factors for pilot plans so that we can use that down the road to maybe target them in another manner, okay? And from that standpoint, the buying cycle is much longer than it is for most of the J's. But in this case, this group, they have lead times of anywhere from 3, 6, 12 months on lead turnaround. So it's very important to build these kind of lists for remarketing. Let me touch on here. All right, so it continued. There's a lot of connections that you can run, particularly when we get into Google Grants. You can connect Google Analytics with Google Ads. So you want to make sure that you go ahead and do that. That allows you to pull in behavior stats from analytics. So within ads, you can see if traffic is bouncing on certain pages. You can see time on site. You can see other health metrics that if you don't have very good conversion tracking in place will help you make decisions on things. And you can also turn around and import the goals that you set up in Google Analytics into Google Ads. I have and do continue to see a little bit of data loss between the two platforms. So there are times where I don't see conversions in Google Ads, but I see them in Google Analytics. For whatever reason, the advent of mobile and privacy blockers has complicated this a little bit. So I like having both set up just to kind of give it a good, gut check, if you will, or benchmark would probably be a better term. And then the other one, you're going to hear me talk about goals a lot, whether it's with Google Analytics, Google Grants. You get up to 20 in Google Ads, and you want to set them up. So we're going to get into the dashboard here and the wealth of information that provides you. If you get these goals set up, you can start to understand, okay, Google Organic is doing very well. Bing Organic is doing well. We're doing some tests and YouTube, that's working great. Device is becoming a large part, particularly for paid or pay-per-click campaigns. We will start typically by running all 3, but we might find either per location or per campaign that, man, mobile is eating up most of the traffic, but it's not converting well. So I'm going to reduce my bids there, increase it on desktop. And all of a sudden you start to see more conversions, you lower your cost per acquisition, your cost per lead, so on and so forth. Time of day, you can make adjustments by time of day. It can help you understand, for a fact that from your paid campaigns, you convert great Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 4 p.m. So if you're doing really good on Google, then take that to your social channels. Okay, this is when I'm going to start posting specials on Facebook. This is when I put this up on Instagram. Use it to inform and empower what you're doing overall marketing, not just with Google Grants, from that standpoint or other initiatives. Analytics allows you to house everything together, learn from it, and then apply it to all of your different marketing initiatives. And again, So if you're in your Google Analytics dashboard, you go down to admin, and we talked about connecting some of these. So you've got your traditional, here's add in users. You can set up filters if you want to remove IP addresses, but you can do your Google Ads linking right here. And then again, your audiences is going to be right below that to where you can add the audiences. And I'll give you some screenshot examples of that as we go here. All right, so let's talk about the dashboard for Google Analytics. You're going to see at first it's going to be customization. I'll have a screenshot of this after we run through this, but the customization left nav tab in Google Analytics allows you to set up. They have free dashboards. They have reports and alerts that you can set up. So I would recommend taking a look at that. We get asked a lot of times, you know, how do we set up a dashboard? How do we make it easy so that everybody can see what's going on either a weekly or monthly basis? There are some paid options out there, but I would recommend exploring this at first just to see if it might meet your needs, that you don't have anything too crazy that requires a ton of customization on your end. Real time. It's one of my favorite aspects of Google Analytics. Basically, it will show you how people are interacting within the site over the last 30 minutes. So how can this help me? One of my favorite examples is we did some work with the Anschutz Center out in Colorado when they were doing the Biggest Loser TV on ABC. And at first we started using it because we had to watch the server loads. They were literally hundreds, if not thousands of people at the same time. So we were working with their hosting company. We had 2 servers set up. We had 2 additional servers ready to go and reserved. So if there was a spillover in the bandwidth, the site wouldn't crash while you have thousands of people on it. But what we also discovered while doing that is that we could see where people were hitting the site. We could see from our paid activities, from organic, from direct, and we could see how there were some cases where we were actually in real time making landing page adjustments to try and improve conversion rates. We videotape sessions, and then we would make weekly updates and just improve our goals and conversions based on what we were seeing live. It's a fascinating area. It's a lot of fun to watch. So if you have a news announcement, if you guys are going to be on the news, it's a good idea just to pull up the real-time analytics and see what's going on with the site. Audience. So this is going to have anything and everything to do. You're going to get basically everything but the user's name and their shoe size in this section of Google Analytics. Okay. They assign IDs to people with the privacy, and that's all you're ever going to see. But you will get ideas on demographics, mobile devices, their Google interests, browsers. You can see what kind of phone they're using, what version of Chrome they're using. There's a wealth of information, location data, anything and everything that you can possibly want to know about the audience is going to be in this section. Acquisition. This is basically going to detail sources to the site. So Google Organic, Google Paid, Direct, so on and so forth, refers. Behavior, again, is going to show you your top pages. It's going to show landing pages. There's some pretty cool flow graphs that show how users are interacting with the pages and how they're navigating the site. So there's some wonderful features in there. And then this is also where you'll find events. So let's say somebody clicked on a button, they filled out a form. You will see these in here. They might have downloaded something. If you have it set up, you'll be able to see that data in here. And again, as we were talking about before, this all integrates with goals. So you're able to break down and see how people are taking actions on the site that you want them to take with the goals, excuse me, and then make informed decisions from there. Conversions, this is once you set up the goals, this is an area, excuse me, throat's going dry, I apologize.
Hey, Clark, while you're taking a quick drink, I think there's actually one question you could probably field as we go, which Shoshana from Washington, D.C. asked us to talk a little bit about creating goals and integrating them between platforms. So they redirect people to a different website to purchase event tickets, and they've struggled to see conversion. So I know we're talking about goals. Maybe you could just speak a minute about that as well.
Absolutely, and we'll cover that. And we run into this all the time. So the way that we handle it, there are 2 ways. The way that we prefer to handle it is with Google Tag Manager, because you can set it up to when somebody clicks on that button and goes off the site, we can track the button click and we can track the link. Okay, so that would be one way to set up the conversion goal. The second way for you to handle this is that Google, once you get the Google grant set up, it's basically a glorified Google Ads console. You can set up conversion actions. So let's say that your online registration platform They fill out the form when they've gone to whatever that might be. A lot of times, you can have them set up a thank you page, and or once that submission form has been completed, they will have an area where you can input that Google Ads conversion tracking code, and you can set it by the destination. So inside Google Ads at the conversions tab, I think we've got a screenshot later, so I'll remember to bring that up. But you can set it up and work with that third-party integrator so that it fires once that happens. If they don't have that capability, you could also set up a thank you page on your website, no index it, and have that third-party service redirect those people there. And that will fire inside of Google Ads, okay? Sometimes it collects data. It really kind of depends on the service and what you're using. A year ago, this was a big problem. Now, a lot of these event platforms that you're talking about are starting to do a lot better job of integrating and allowing you to add that code, because you ultimately want to understand where it's coming from. The problem is, if you don't use Google Tag Manager and you just use the Google Ads, you're not going to be able to apply any of that data to Google Analytics, which is why I like to be able to use Google Tag Manager, because I can see that event in Google Analytics, and then it will all tie back into Google Ads, and it kind of keeps the link. Because a lot of times what happens is once it leaves your site and goes into that third-party service, it can no longer determine what that source was, okay? So it helps from the paid side to understand how your paid campaigns are performing. But once you pass it from your website and pass off to here, Google can't track it anymore, and you lose some of that data. So again, if you can, Google Tag Manager. If you can't, you can create conversion code within Google Ads grants to pass off to the service, whatever you might be using, and they should be able to integrate that. All right, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So that handles conversions. And again, this also kind of applies to what you're just talking about, cross-channel tracking. The advent of mobile really caused Google to re-examine how they handle attribution, because somebody might come in on a mobile device and then come back later on a tablet or for a search. So when we set up paid campaigns now, particularly when I set up the goals, I set up a linear model, which basically gives 40% to the first interaction that Google sees, 40% to the last, and then gives whatever the remaining percent is between how many touch points are in the middle to those properties. So if I attained a user by a paid click and they came back, let's say organic search, and then saw a Facebook post and then finally came back as direct, it kind of gives credit points, and vice versa. Let's say that you're posting Facebook posts and somebody comes to the site, but then they come back later organically. If you're using the last click model, Google is going to say, I'm going to give the credit to the organic. But if you use a linear model, it also gives some credit to that Facebook post. So you begin to understand that those Facebook posts are doing it. And this is, in my opinion, a very good idea for marketing, because you want to understand how you're touching consumers and how you're first getting them to the site. So that's great, came back organically, but they really discovered you through social media. So we really give the social some credit, because if you don't know that, you might stop doing posts, when in reality, it was really kind of feeding and helping the organic, okay, especially from a brand standpoint. Again, the Discover tab, this is where we talked about some of the different tools and integration that Google offers. And the admin, this is where you're going to be able to do account setups. We saw a screenshot of it before, set up goals, connect audiences, the various Google properties, so on and so forth. So when you get to the current version of analytics, on the left sidebar, you have your customization, real-time audience, acquisition behavior, and then down here you see the other tabs. So this all corresponds nicely with what we just discussed. All right, so let's talk a little bit about types of goals and how and what we recommend to do to set them up. Within Google Analytics, you can set them up basically by page somebody visited, time on site. You can do pages viewed, and then again by the on-site events, which is where Google Tag Manager ties in. A lot of times, a lot of clients, will also have, let's say that there's a Salesforce embed, so you're not the website you have, you're not using Gravity forms, you're actually embedding a form on there. You have to use Google Tag Manager to collect that action and start tracking goal data there. A lot of times, we've worked with a lot of J's that just send people off into the membership system, or if they want to register for a class online, you're going to need that event tracking to track that and get the best possible data that you. Again, you can set up ads goals to track within Google Ads, but at the end of the day, you really want to have your house in order and make sure that you're hitting, the goals, so you can understand holistically how traffic is doing. I'll keep going here. As you can tell, I tend to ramble and get into things. The easiest way to do this at the end of the day is if you have a form or whatnot, just set up a thank you page. And actually, no index to pages is a tip here. We've run into an issue where we have one client where we're getting all these thank you page submissions and couldn't figure it out. Well, they had optimized the page and it was showing up in search under the site link, so people were just going directly to the thank you page. That was a fun one to find. Hopefully you guys learned from that one there. Out of the box, it was a lot of fun. Event tracking. I know some people are probably going to ask about call tracking, and there are services out there, $40-50 that can track calls. One way to understand if you need this is the mobile click to call on websites and even the emails. You can set those up with like the telephone, whatever the code is, on their mobile devices, or even on their desktops today, can just click it because everything's tied into the phones. You can track those events. And a lot of locations, particularly over the last year, especially with COVID, we have seen phone calls double and triple in some cases. People aren't filling out forms, they're not sure if you're open, they have questions. It's really important to start to understand if I'm getting a lot of phone calls. And if I had $1 for every time that we heard that, oh, we're not getting calls, we set this up, and then all of a sudden there is a ton of calls. Well, they were going into the reception center and they either weren't being picked up, or for whatever reason, you just hadn't thought through the intake process on that. They're losing leads. So something simple and easy to track. I've seen a lot of J's that, hey, call us here, email us here, here's the form below that, but they don't have event tracking or goal tracking set up for, excuse me, emails coming through. You want to understand every touch point that you're giving users to see how they prefer to connect with you, and then put data behind that. And again, here's just an overview of the conversion section with some goals that we had set up for one client. You can see, so here we've got phone calls. This is using call tracking. We have email clicks and other promotions and whatnot from that standpoint. All right, so very quickly, I'm going to show you how to set up a destination goal within the backend. So when you get into Google Analytics, you're going to go to settings, you're going to hit goals, and then there's going to be this red goal button. We've maxed out at 20, that's why it's not giving me the option. So you hit the new goal button, you're going to select custom, then continue. I'll pop up the deal here. So when I ask for the goal setup, Google offers now, and at the very bottom here, it's going to have custom. I use custom because if you select something, a lot of times it will add pre-selected attributes that are kind of a pain later to make adjustments on. So this is just my personal preference. I like to keep it to the custom. From that standpoint, it'll then go to the goal description. So as I noted over here, just add a name of whatever it might be. Select the type. So we talked about the different types. So here's the destination. Don't use SMART goals. I forgot to put that in there, but don't use them. You'll set up the destination goal, and then it'll bring you up to the third point, the goal details. You're going to get this drop down, and it's going to give you equal to, begins with, a regular expression. If you are tracking or appended URLs, a lot of times you see a landing page URL as a question mark with the swiggly things across. If you do not select begins with, if you use equal to, the goal won't work. So you always set this up with begins with, okay? And then you can hit verify goal and go from there. Here's the other thing. In Google Analytics, it just wants the page slug. Hello? It doesn't want the whole my site / thank you, okay? So just make sure that you put the page slug in here. Again, so thank you is a page, you just put it in there, verify this goal, save, and you're off to the races, and your goals will be there.
Hey, Clark, before you run forward.
Yep.
Clark. Hey.
Yeah.
So two quick questions. So in your opinion, what's the best platform for off-site event registrations for tracking conversions? Is there a recommendation we have? Because I know.
In terms of actually tracking them?
Mm-hmm.
Google
Does it
Tag
integrate
Manager
with-
just integrates with everything so well.
Exactly.
I would just stay there. There are other, you know, HubSpot. There's others out there, but Google Tag Manager is where I would invest my time and energy and efforts.
Okay. Carol, if you have more questions about that, just shoot me an email after and we can talk in greater detail. And then Clark, one other thing, Tom from the Milton and Betty Cats J said, we have a Facebook Messenger widget for people to communicate with our J that has increased interactions with members through the website, but is there a way to track that through Google Analytics?
Google Tag Manager. So you can actually, when you see chat
Bing,
windows
bing, bing
and
on
different
Google Tag
boxes,
Manager.
there are ways to add it to where there's an interaction there that it will track that event from that standpoint.
Okay.
So Facebook usually plays well with the Google stuff, but we've done it with all kinds of chat pop-ups. So there's got to be a way to adjust the code to where you can trigger that event.
Tom, if you have more questions about that, just shoot me an email and we can figure out the how. All right, Clark, back to you.
All right, absolutely. So why set up the goals? Or this one's going to be about, you know, what do I want to track across the different verticals here? So I'm going to pop this down. So what should I track? Device performance. This is something, particularly paid campaigns, that I spend a ton of time on, even on a weekly basis. As I mentioned before, Google, Facebook are going to send you guys a ton of mobile traffic. It's mobile index first. You're just going to see a lot of it. And a lot of times, you know, we run into conversion issues. So if I see that my mobile is getting a ton of traffic, the first thing I'm going to do, quite honestly, is go to the landing page and pull up my phone and see if there's any like issues, right? There's a lot of times where I've gone to pages and I'm like, oh man, that's out of whack. That doesn't look good. So we might make adjustments. So there's other times we'll consult with clients and they have these big images above the fold. And so a user hits that landing page and all they see is an image. They're going to bounce. I mean, people make up their mind if they're going to stare at it within 2 to 3 seconds. It also impacts page speeds. It impacts your quality score. You know, people are just going to get out of town. So if the mobile experience looks good, then again, I start reducing bids on the sources that aren't working, and that can help increase CPAs because I want more desktop, I might want more traffic. That helps me make that determination across the board. You can find this under the audience tab, mobile overview. So that's where you can look at device performance. Source medium is probably the one that I look at most often. So this is going to tell me, okay, it came from Google and it was organic. So that's SEO. It was direct. When you see direct traffic, 50 to 60% of that is going to be organic, and the rest, if you're running paid campaigns, is going to be mixed in there. I've seen this increase every year with the privacy and other issues that people are running into. We've got our Google pay-per-click here, CPC, and then here's a newsletter email in this instance. So, you know, able to understand that, okay, we're sending out a newsletter. It takes a lot of time each week, but okay, look here, we've had 16 conversions over the last week. Again, you can see your source medium reporting from acquisition, medium when you get into that left navigation. Google Ads, once you connect those accounts, you're able to look at your campaigns. You can look at search queries. You can look at ads, and it allows you to look at these things by device, time of day. It's just a wealth of information. The Google offers a lot, but I love being able to look at this inside analytics as well. It also makes reporting easier because the Google Ads reporting is a little lacking. I'll say right now to be polite. I forgot to do the air quotes, lacking. Landing pages. When you go into behavior, you know, there are pages and it shows you like every page on the site, how much traffic they're getting, so on and so forth. But landing pages is really, it's that first interactions where people land. You can see how they convert, how they're interacting. You can see navigation and go from there. And goals. I think we've covered a lot of the goals from that standpoint, but it gives you an overview of how people are converting based on the goals you set up on the site. All right, I'm going to really kind of run through this here. I want to make sure we stay on time and give you guys time for questions. So additional tools. I think we talked about Google Tag Manager, and so we actually had already covered the question here. But this is like the number one thing I use for that instance when you got some people offsite use Tag Manager, so you at least understand the intent. If I'm running paid campaigns and I don't have tracking the way I want it, I am setting up Google Tag Manager, and it's also critical for Google Grants. Two reasons. One, so I can track those goals. But one of the tips or secrets of Google Grants, they have the max CPC at $2. If you use the automated bidding, max clicks or max conversions, and we'll talk about this here, you will spend more than that $2 max. Google allows you to go above that. So I've actually got some Google Grants ads campaigns where our average CPCs are, $5, $6. Okay. Google Search Console, if you're working on the site's organic rankings, if you're doing SEO, I would use that. And then Google Campaign URL Builder, we've got a link for you here. If we're running Facebook campaigns, we will append the URLs as I talked about before, so that I can send that data in Google Analytics to see this is Facebook as the source, medium and CPC, and then the campaign to see how it's performing. And again, this is just a shot of in the behavior section of what those events look like. All right, so Catherine, any questions before we get into the fundamentals of Google Grants?
I believe we've handled it. Let's move to Google Grants. You're gonna have to talk even faster, Clark.
Working on it. All right. So we're gonna talk about campaign setups, campaign setup tips. Again, here's this conversion tracking stuff. So we'll talk about VOD conversion tracking, campaign health, additional management tips that I've picked up over the years that kind of help you make sure you stay within the guidelines, and then we'll go from there. This is just an overview shot of a Google Ads dashboard. All right, so campaign setup. Google Grants has requirements that you must meet when you set your accounts up. No single keywords. You can't put in gym. Okay, overly generic. I don't know what that means. I've never been pinged with it, but their example was today's news. So fear not, they will send you a non-compliance report if they feel you're violating something. So no worries there. Valid conversions. You can't just set up your contact page as a conversion because the conversion rate will be sky high. You can try it, but I've actually been dinged for it a couple of times. So that's why getting Google Tag Manager and what they call valid conversion setup is very important. And they'll have their little, trying to find the appropriate word, it's escaping me, and I'm going to keep this PC for everybody. So they have their account managers that will get in and actually look how you have the goals set up. So this is something that you have to pay attention to. You must have at least 2 ads per ad group, and we'll talk about what I recommend later on here in a little bit. You must have at least 2 ad groups per campaign. And again, we'll get into examples of that here in a bit. 2 site link extensions. We'll get into extensions as well. And you must respond to the program survey each year. Make sure that whoever's managing the account, their email is on that, because they will send you that. We worked with clients who I log in one day and it's suspended. What the heck's going on? Oh, didn't reply to the survey that had been emailed to them. Same thing with the non-compliance report. They will email that to you. I get a notification in my client center, but if you guys are managing this on your own, just make sure that you have that communication open and going from there. So let's talk about campaign setups. I like to do this, particularly with JCCs, by service. So I would do a campaign for fitness. I would do a campaign for camps. I have film festivals, after school camps, so on and so forth. Okay. When you do that, here's a little tip for you guys. Always run a brand ad group with your brand name. It's free traffic. You're not paying for it. It always has a tremendously high conversion rate or click-through rate. So it's going to keep you above that click requirement that they have for each campaign, which is 5%. And as you guys can see here, so this is an example of a grants campaign we have running. This is for fitness. We've got gyms, local centers. I've got this brand campaign in here. So look at that click-through rate. So all the personal training, group X, these are hard to keep above that 5% and still send traffic. I've got my brand ad group in here. Look at my overall click-through rate. So there you go. Setup tips. So as you saw before, so I had like a gyms ad group. So send it to the page that talks about your facility. Your group X, set up an ad group just for your group X. There are your 2 ad groups. You've got one for your brand. There's a 3rd one. Set them up based on pages you have to the site. So this will do several things for you, but it'll keep your quality scores high. It'll keep the traffic super relevant. It'll get better quality scores, and it'll convert better. There is inside Google Ads, there's a keyword planner tool that can help you find the appropriate keywords to start these ad groups. I like to start with 10 to 25. I might get crazy, go 25 to 50, just depending on the subject matter. But that's a great way to do it if you don't have existing keywords. If you guys did a powwow and you've already got 10, 25 keywords in there, it doesn't hurt to use the tool to see if there are keywords maybe that you're missing. It's one of the ways that we discovered virtual fitness classes, virtual group X classes. When COVID hit, there was an explosion for that. So the J's that we've worked with that offer that, we built out very specific campaigns for that. The tool also allows you to look at a competitor's website. So you can put their URL in there and it'll kick back what Google thinks that site should show and search for. And again, you can just mine it for additional information and targets. I would consider adding a competitor ad group. If you have 24-hour fitness, gyms like that, that will send traffic and you can convert from it. So maybe somebody's tired of spending that $10 a month to watch all the people take selfies and do all that crazy stuff. If they want a more, just a much better experience that I know you guys offer, you will be able to take some traffic for those groups. When you set the keywords, set them to broad match. Google has exact phrase and broad match. Broad match modified is going away. That's when you have the pluses on there. Broad match essentially says if I'm searching for, you put the keyword as gyms near, that's going to trigger results for best gyms near me, best local city gyms. Use that broad match at first, and then we'll talk about how you can fine tune that later. Within each ad group, start with 3 ads, do 2 expanded text, and do 1 responsive search ad. And that responsive search ad will have you add, 5, 10, 15 headlines and up to 4 descriptions. And Google uses its algorithm to show the best performing ads and create different versions, but you control what shows. It will really increase your conversion rates. And the last one here is keyword insertion. You can look this up. So in my title line, I might put keyword and gym. What it does is when it shows that ad, let's say I search gyms near me, it will show, instead of showing keyword gym in the ad, it will show the keyword the user searched on, and that will also increase your click-through rate to help you maintain Google Health goals. So again, when you're in Google Ads, you'll hit Tools and Settings. You'll go to the Keyword Planner. You can discover new keywords. There's also a search volume, so if you're trying to do some budgeting, it helps, but it's, I don't know, it's hit or miss. But you hit Discover New Keywords, and you can start with up to 10 new keywords, or you can start with the website, you hit Get Results, and it'll pop up a wealth of wonderful information for you guys. Setup tips. Use all the ad extensions, okay? So you have to use 2 of the site link extensions, and it might be Group X, and you send them directly to that page, and it's when you see the links under the ads, okay? What I like to do with those is, I might have Group X, I might have, personal training. Also use it a lot to put in monthly specials, because I want to keep the ads constant. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but there are structured snippets, there's call out extensions, there's call extension, put your phone number in there. You can connect it to your GMB, where you'll see people get, directions, wealth of snippets, or extensions. So use those. It can really increase click-through rates. Don't rewrite your ads each month. I know a lot of times you guys have different promotions that running on a month. Keep a static ad in place and use that just in general, learn about a monthly special, see about how you for you or your situation. Then use the site links, use the promotion links. You can 50% off enrollment. Use those to change up the offers, because the system, especially when you use automated bidding, relies heavily on that data and the history of the ads, the keywords, so on and so forth. And then again, when you're going to start new campaigns, under the settings and bidding, you can do manual bidding or enhanced bidding with that $2 max. Blow right past that, go to the settings, use max clicks when you start. After you've run it for 30 days, you're getting traffic, and let's say you have 5+ conversions, switch it to max conversions and let Google run with it, and you will start getting average CPCs well above that $2 threshold. The other recommendation, I've worked a lot of J's. I know you want to be specific on zips. It's Google grants. You're not paying for it, air quotes again. do geo-targeting. Even if it's here in New York and or if you're in Dallas and you're doing a 45-mile radius, the system just works better. When you try targeting by zip codes, it's just going to restrict the traffic that you're going to get. So go with the radius when you're setting up the location targeting. Volume conversions, I've talked a lot about this, but really at the end of the day, it needs to be, a phone call click, an email click. It might be a thank you page. Make sure that you're using those instead of just like anytime somebody hits like a group etch page. Again, as I talked about before, the conversion rate's too high, they'll go look at it and they'll flag it and you'll get that non-compliance report. And again, if you set goals in Google Analytics, import them into your Google Grants ads, and you'll be able to see it. As we talked about with the offline events tracking with Google Tag Manager, if that's not an option, you can't get GTM set up. You can within Google Ads set up conversion pixels that you can put on these different landing pages. Health requirements. Really, at the end of the day, any keywords that you're running need to have a quality score of 2 or higher. 3 or higher, actually. So if you have a quality score of 2 or less, and this is Google's magic number, then you have to go in and pause it. This is something that will kick on a non-compliance report. But I've noted how, once every 30 days that you can go in, you can set up, look at campaigns and look at keywords. And you can see here on this one. So I've got a quality score of 1 out of 10 on this one. Typically you're going to see it need more impressions before Google will flag it. But if you've looked at it and seen a couple months in a row, it's a good idea to pause it. But again, so this one's only had 1 impression. I might get 9 more impressions, but get 1 click. All of a sudden I've got a 10% click-through rate. So focus on keywords that have a lot of impressions versus some of the low-end ones here. And then again, the campaign has to maintain a 5% click-through rate each month. And I've noted here how you can go into the Google Ads and you can, understand how to get those click-through rates up. And it's basically, you're going to have keywords, again, one's had 28 impressions, Tai Chi lessons, 0% click-through rate. That's dragging my click-through rate down. It's a lot of impressions. Even though it's got a good quality score, it's going to drag my click-through rate down, so I'm going to pause it. You can get into the query search, or there's a search terms report. So you look at the keywords and you look on the side and there'll be search terms. Even within Google Ads, you're going to want to set negatives here, okay? You might be having gyms, you might be running the broad keyword gyms near, but it might be triggering search for best gym jobs near, best free gyms near. Those aren't going to convert. They're going to ruin your click-through rate. You're going to want to put those as negatives, okay? Here's an example of an NYC client that we had, gyms in California. Okay, I set that as a negative excluded because I don't know why somebody in that radius was searching for gyms in California. I guess they have a private jet, good for them. We don't want that showing a grants account to keep the health up. And again, here's some of that competitor search. You guys can see what's coming up from that standpoint. If you see a good keyword, you add it, it will actually get you more clicks. Just because it's being triggered by the broad match in the search queries doesn't mean it's going to show up. So there are cases where if you add that keyword and tell Google, I want to show for that, it sends you more. Review user demographic data. The 18 to 24 group and the 65 plus are the two culprits a lot of times when I look at campaigns and performance. So, for the 18-24 group, they're doing a lot of impressions around things, but they're not converting. They're not who I want. You can actually turn it off so that Google Ads will not show them your ads or not trigger searches, for them from that standpoint. Again, we talked about device performance. Understand what the click-through rates are for the devices. You can see here the tablet is at a 2.9% click-through rate. So I'm probably going to want to turn tablet off just because it's killing our click-through rate. So why run it, right? All right. Another thing here, look at the ad schedule and our reporting to identify poor days and times. If the ads are running at night, but they're getting really, they're getting a lot of impressions, but they're not getting click-through rates, that can also kill your click-through rate. So you can turn the ads off at night and just run them from like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. You have the conversion set up, you have the click-through rate set up, you can make informed decisions about what you're trying to do. In the back end here of Google Analytics, they also have, or Google Ads, excuse me, they have this recommendations tab. Even if you don't use them, and I ignore 95% of their recommendations, you click on this little tab, you hit dismiss, you get that. This is a campaign I just checked last Monday, and it's already down to 74%. So I'll go through here, I'll get back up to 100%. The campaigns prefer. There's no official word on this. I've seen this, and some of the other groups that I work with that manage, 7-figure monthly spends within Google Ads have seen it as well. Even if you're not going to use them, dismiss them. And again, if you're having problems getting traffic, there's something called dynamic search ads. You can set up a dynamic search ad campaign and just Google it. And basically what it does is you tell Google, I want to show ads based on these pages on the site. Google indexes them, and then it picks keywords and it picks ads and shows them. If you're really super concerned about how your brand's going to show up in search, this is not for you because you have zero control. All it is a good way for you to learn and have Google send additional keywords, see how they convert, and maybe open up new topic areas, new areas that you might potentially market. Questions?
Good job, Clark. That was a lot.
I'm right at time, right? Yeah. I hit time?
Right at time. On the
right.
money.
Okay, everybody.
Everyone.
You too. Bye.